What's going on, everybody? Anthony Servino here, Face Off Sports Network, bringing you my top starts and sits at the running back position for NFL Week 6. But first, let's be accountable here. Let's go over how my Week 5 players did and another subpar week. I'm going to be hard on myself. So I was all in last week on Najee Harris. Najee Harris against that Dallas defense. It looked like a smash spot for the second week in a row. That Dallas defense tightened up against the run, held Najee Harris in fantasy to 9.7 points. I use PPR scoring and I use a 10-point PPR floor as my parameter. 10 points or more, I feel like that's good enough to count as a hit. Anything less than 10 points is a miss. Najee Harris, 9.7. I'm going to count that obviously as a miss. And it's really close. But let's put it this way. Let's say I tell you to start Najee Harris and you lost by 0.2 of a fantasy point and Najee got you 9.7. Well, guess what? You lost. So that should also count as a loss and a miss for me. So that's a bad one from Najee Harris. I totally misread that one. Travis Etienne gets 12, outshined by Tank Bigsby, but Travis Etienne has been a floor player so far, has not given us the big pop yet, but we hit on Travis Etienne and Rhamondre Stevenson. Despite the rumors of he wasn't going to start and he didn't, he was still going to play. He finishes one of the top running backs on a week, 19.2 PPR points. Now, let's go to my sits. Devin Singletary did not play. At the time of this recording, it was still up in the air, and it looked like he was going to. So Devin Singletary is a scratch here. Rico Dowdle, again, I misread this entire Cowboys-Steelers game. Cowboys, one of the worst running teams when it comes to efficiency. Steelers, one of the best defenses in the NFL. So, of course, Rico Dowdle is one of the top running backs in a week with 19 PPR points. So that's a miss. And then I missed on James Conner. He ended up with 14. I thought the 49ers, it was a must-have game. They end up losing, and guys like James Conner and Kyler Murray on the ground, they get the job done, showing us that this 49ers defense might be a little overrated at times. So subpar week on me. 2-1 with the starts. 0-2, and I guess 0-2-1 because Devin Singletary did not play. So now let's get to this week. Let's try to erase last week. Let's go for a more productive week 6, and we're going to start with Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has been outstanding this season in fantasy football. 3 out of 4 games, over 15.2 PPR points. He's getting us 18.5 touches per game. He's also getting it done as a receiver out of the backfield. And this is all despite the fact that there's still Tajay Spears there, but we had to follow the money. I tell everybody in the offseason, well, if there's a crowded wide receiver room, a crowded running back room, how do we tell who to pick? Well, usually if we follow the money, that's where the production comes from. That's where the touches go to. And that's what's happening right now with Tony Pollard. 3 out of 4 games, at least 4 targets. He is getting 14% of his team targets. He is being targeted on 22.2% of the routes he is running. Not a bad ball carrier either. 68.7% of his yards have been coming after contact. And he's also getting 49% of his snaps that he is playing on offense. He's getting a touch on. So he's getting the opportunity. He's producing fairly well with the opportunities as a runner and as a receiver. Has 2 touchdowns on the year. And I love this matchup for Tony Pollard against the Indianapolis Colts. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL overall, but especially at defending enemy running backs. If we look at what the Colts have done or not done this year when it comes to stopping running backs, they have given up at least 10 PPR points to 6 different backs in 5 games, and they've given up 2 pop games. What's a pop game? 20 plus PPR points. They gave up 25.9 last week to Bigsby, 26.8 in week 1 to Joe Mixon. They're being gashed all over the place on the ground as receivers out of the backfield by running backs. We are in on Tony Pollard this week. Let's go to another one, David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery's been really good this year. And how good? Well, he's giving us double-digit PPR points every single game, at least 15 of them. This is while conceding significant snaps as we expected Jahmyr Gibbs. They're fairly close for the most part to, a 60-40 split going in favor of Gibbs most of the time. But Nick Montgomery, when he's on the field, he's getting touches like Tony Pollard. 62.1% of the snaps that David Montgomery's on the field for, he's getting a touch. He is getting 18 touches per game. Solid runner, 2.8 average yards after contact. And this is impressive using the tools at rotowire.com. 60.3% of every touch that David Montgomery gets, he scores a touchdown. Right now, he has 4 total touchdowns on a year. He is scored in every single game. He has a 100% catch rate. When he is being targeted, not a lot. He has 9 targets on the year. He has caught every single one. So he's terrific all-around back. They're getting Dallas this week. And the reason why, I get it, Montgomery, some people say he should be included on this list. Some people say he's too good, he shouldn't be. While we got the presence of Gibbs, we also have to factor in Dallas, because Dallas looked like the smash spot last week. Because the first 3 games of the year, if you know, Dallas's defense, they were horrific. Remember with Kamara, remember with Derrick Henry, and even Jerome Ford in week 1 had like 18 PPR points. They looked like this was the team, you're going to run it down their throats. They ended up bottling up the Giants and Devin Singletary in week 4. And to me, all right, it's the Giants. They don't exactly have the best run-blocking offensive line. Devin Singletary isn't the greatest running back. So I expect Dallas to step up. Last week against Pittsburgh, you're down DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. All right, Dallas is going to get smoked by Najee Harris because the Steelers and Arthur Smith, they are alive. They live to run the football. And Dallas, Dallas showed up. So I think with these factors of, okay, well, Montgomery's contending with Gibbs, Dallas is starting to play well. Do I start or sit Montgomery? You're going to start him. I don't know if Dallas is as bad as they were in the early 3 games, and I'm not sure they're as good as they've been in the last 2. And Montgomery's hot. Even if Montgomery doesn't give us the 15, which is his floor on the year, I think he gets us at least 10. I think he does enough. If it's a bad week where he scores a touchdown and gives us enough production elsewhere to give us that 10 PPR point parameter. Let's go to my final start at the running back position. I'm going to go to James Conner. I can't sit this guy anymore. James Conner, he's attached, and we're seeing this with Brian Robinson. When you're attached to one of these types of quarterbacks, it is really hard to sit you in fantasy because the enemy defense have to make a decision. Oh, do I try to take out Najee Harris or Justin Fields? Do I try to take out Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry? Do I try to take out James Conner or Kyler Murray? These RPO teams, these teams with the dynamic quarterback and the outstanding running back, you got to put the running back in there because at worst, he's going to be a weapon on the goal line. And James Conner last week, despite the fact I told you to sit him, still gives us 12 to 14 PPR points, depending on where you play. 19 for 86, 2 of 14 as a receiver, just enough fantasy points to get over that 10-point barometer, like I said earlier. 4 out of 5 games played, he's given us at least 12. 12 was a bad game for him last week. Obviously, Detroit stifles him in week 3, but Detroit's one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Now you get Green Bay this week. And before we get into Green Bay, let's talk about James Conner. 18.2 touches per game. The volume is there. Very solid, especially as a receiver when he is catching the football. He is averaging 10.9 yards after the catch. He has 10 targets on the year. Solid all-around player, high floor, and when he starts cooking with the rest of his offense, he also brings a pretty solid ceiling in Detroit. This is a great matchup. They look middle of the pack on paper, but overall, I think running backs have done fairly well against the Green Bay Packers this year. Every running back they've faced in terms of the RB1 on the team has gone for at least 10 PPR points. And the worst one was the Spears-Pollard combination in that weird week 3 game with Malik Willis and Will Levis, and the offense kind of looked shoddy either way. But the better running backs, we saw Saquon go for 33 and 100 yards and 33 fantasy points. Jonathan Taylor rushes for 100 back in week 2, but only 15 PPR because he didn't get in the end zone. We see Aaron Jones put up a complete game in week 4. And then last week, Kyron, another 100-yard game and finished with 16.5 PPR points. So 3 running backs over 100 yards this year and 4 running backs over 93 against the Green Bay Packers. They've also given up 4 total touchdowns to the running back position as well. So I think this is a nice matchup for James Conner to not only pop as a runner, but he should possibly also find the end zone. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon so you can be notified anytime we are live to answer your questions, or we drop more content just like this. If you have start-sit questions, ask them live or ask them in the comments of this video. Myself or one of the other great members of this Face Off Sports Network team will get back to you as soon as we can. Now let's go to some of my sits. We're going to start with the aforementioned Rhamondre Stevenson. And this is purely matchup, folks. And Ram has been nice this year. 4 out of 5 games, double-digit PPR points. 3 out of 5 games, over 17. Why are we going to sit Ram this week coming off of one of the best games of the year? He's a matchup play. If you look at the games he played well, they were fairly easy matchups on paper when it comes to enemy running backs. This year, and the one he struggled against the Jets, they erased him. They were the 4th toughest matchup for enemy running backs. Now you get Houston. They're the 8th toughest matchup for enemy backs. And yes, Rams doing it all. 18 touches per game. The volume is there. As a runner, he's been really good. He has a 24.7% broken tackle rate. He's averaging 3.4 yards after contact. 50% of his snaps, he is garnering a touch. So the opportunity and the production is there for Ram, but I just don't love this matchup. This could be, and I get Drake Mace coming back, and that could be good for Ram's receiving profile, as he's had 3 targets plus in all but 1 game. And in his past 4 games, 3 of which he's had either 4 or 5 targets. Houston can very well come out and just kick the Patriots' ass. And if that happens, we saw the Jets do that in week 3. Rhamondre Stevenson's completely phased out and erased. What helps Ram are these slower pace, like that game. If you watch that Jets-Miami game, if you watch that Cincy game in week 1, it's slow paced. It's boring. But it's just a lot of ground and pound and defense. I don't know if that happens this week with the Houston Texans. They have the firepower. They have C.J. Stroud. You get a 2 or 3 early possession lead on this Patriots team by Rhamondre Stevenson as a runner, and then he becomes a very touchdown-dependent asset in fantasy football. And again, Houston, one of the better run defenses in the NFL. They've really minimized, like outside of Aaron Jones, who went for 25, and James Cook, who went for 17. Every other running back held under 10, including guys like James Conner and Jacksonville running backs. Let's go to another sit, Rachaad White. And at this point, I how do we trust Rachaad White? You got Bucky Irving in the mix. And Rachaad White, outside of popping for 16.6 in week 1, every other game since then, a 4-game stretch, under 10.6, 3 of which under 9.6. Even the targets, 2 out of 5 games, he had 6 targets, which we're used to seeing from Rachaad White. The other ones, he's under 3 targets. His touches per game, he's down to 13.6. Only 35.2% of the snaps he is playing, he is getting a touch. As a runner, he's surprisingly better this year. 77% of his yards are coming after contact. He's getting 11.1 yards after catch, but it's just like if he's not getting the volume, he's not bringing the fantasy production. And obviously, like Bucky Irving, it looks like he's emerging as a legitimate guy in this offense. The past 2 games, especially, Bucky Irving played 30 and 22 snaps, which were both season highs for him. And he's seriously starting to eat into Rachaad White. And this is a matchup against the Saints. I do not like the Saints' ground defense is really good this year. They're 12th 12th toughest in the NFL in terms of bottling up enemy running backs. If you look at what they've given up, like Saquon popped on him. Saquon pops on everybody. Kareem Hunt had a solid game on Monday Night Football. Every other running back, including Bijan Robinson, held under 11 points. And even like in week 1, I get it was a different team, but look at the way Chuba Hubbard's playing right now. And they erased him. So the Saints, pretty good run defense. I don't like the usage for Rachaad White. He is a very scary player to start. And remember what I just said about the snaps with the touch. Only 35.2% of Rachaad White's snaps coming with the touch. That's 19th percentile amongst qualifying running backs. Bucky Irving, 48.6% of his snaps coming with the touch, which is 79th percentile. So we are sitting what looks like a touchdown and pass catching dependent Rachaad White. Let's finish with Jerome Ford. It's really hard to trust anything going with the Cleveland Browns, with the current state of Deshaun Watson, the current state of that offense. Last week was a really, really nice spot for Jerome Ford, and he ends with 7.9 PPR points. I really thought he was going to play well. He ran efficiently, 9 for 47. But this game was blown open, and this is a team that, if it's not close, they're going to try to air out the football. And Jerome Ford was essentially phased out, and this is almost like a Rhamondre Stevenson situation. It becomes extremely touchdown dependent, and Ford has not scored a touchdown since week 1. Right now, he's only getting 13.6 touches per game. He is getting 13.5% of his team targets. He's had 2 games this year with 7 targets. The other ones with either 4, 3, or 1. Pretty good runner when he is in space. A 25% broken tackle rate, 2.9 yards after contact. But all of that is moot if he's not getting the touches. And like I said, 13.6 touches per game, 32.5% of his snaps with the touch. That's just as bad. That's 16th percentile. That's just as bad as Rachaad White. And now you get Philly. They're a middle-of-the-pack defense when it comes to containing the run. But, realistically, Philly's defense could also come out and pummel the Browns. They could bring the pass rush and really get to Deshaun Watson, who's not playing good football right now. And the Browns have a good offense talent-wise. They have a lot of good skill position players. Guys like Amari Cooper, they're getting volume and they can't get out of their own way. You got to bench your quarterback at some point. And this isn't, I try to keep biases aside when it comes to Deshaun Watson. He is not playing good football right now. And if they want to spark this team and spark this offense, and selfishly, if you want to make these guys relevant in fantasy again, you got to make quarterback change. That's going to do it for today's Start Sit Running Back video. I'm Anthony Servino for the Face Off Sports Network. We'll see.